They're very quiet tonight.
They like put that image, that Joker image, on everything. They even have it. I was passing Hot Topic, and they had it on a women's bathing suit. And it was like the bats.
Guess where the eyes were.
Yeah, they'll get you.
So we don't need a moderator, right?
So the way we usually do these is we try and do it as a Q&A and let you guys ask us anything we want. First of all, let's just say it's late.
He said, ask us anything we want.
Oh, ask anything. It's subliminal. No, we really... Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con is a beast. You guys have stayed late. You're here late to see us. You packed into this room. It's really hot. Thank you so much. Like 1,000,000% thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, please. Secondly, okay, yeah, there's a Q&A mic there, but I think we can just hear you and repeat your stuff. But so we try and just give you, this is my favorite thing to do, is allow you guys now to ask anything you want about the things we have coming up, about our careers, about... the
pretty
books,
much anything. Anything covers anything.
All the other panels, we usually have to get up there and just hawk stuff at you and read the solicits and all that stuff. We don't get a chance to really
So we won't do that. We won't tell you, please make sure to pick up Last Night when it comes out, or the 12-page Swamp Thing story that's in the Walmart store or something. We won't try and do that to you tonight. So
or Batman Who Laughs.
Right, we won't want it. Right. We won't do that to you. We promise.
Definitely no.
So I'm so torn about I can't. There's no Wi-Fi, right? There is none. That's the thing. Meaning, like, if I did go to my email and look up one thing, I'd spoil one.
I don't know. You got cool pictures you want to show.
That's all right. I know. Now I'm like a big tease. I'll stand over there and take a look and see if I can do it while we answer questions.
Okay. All right, so does anybody, and there has to be somebody in this large room, have the first question for us? Oh, right there. Okay, go ahead.
Alrighty, guys. How are you?
Hey.
Doing all right.
All right, so my name's Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
How are you? All right, good to see you again, Good to see you again, son.
You too.
Alrighty, so what I admire about you guys is almost for you guys, almost a decade, 2019, and for you guys, half of the decade. So how has your communication style and story style have evolved between the first time you guys worked together?
Well, Scott and I didn't get along when we first got together because Scott was very...
I was a dick.
Yes, he was a dick. There you have it, right? Listen, we came from very different backgrounds. I was a Marvel guy, originally, and how we were trained was to take a 6-page plot and turn that into a 22-page story. And so, it was up to me to pace that, direct it, how many panels, all that. And Scott came from a full script background, and so he wanted to give me every bit of direction and every single stitch of dialogue, which when you get a plot, you get a few key moments of dialogue, so you can hit those moments, emotionally and all that. And then when the writer gets the arc back, he scripts from there. And then I was working with Tom McFarlane, which is even looser. He'd call me up on the telephone, and I'd jot down notes or use a microcassette recorder as he was telling me what was to take place in the story. And he was even looser. He'd go, I need 3 pages of Sam and Twitch, and they'll be talking about this. Give me a little bit of room on the 3rd page. Got a lot to say. I don't care if they're in a bridge, in an office, in the toilet. I don't care. Just, here's what we got to do. And so very loose. And so Scott came out really controlling with all these words. And I said to him,
Words.
I said, yeah, words, And I go, listen, kid. I go, I don't need all of this. Just give me the important words. And he fired back, they're all important. And I said, well, that's not really true, And you said you're a dick. I'm going to describe it. So
I was just scared.
And so he is very protective of his words. And so he told me all these accolades that has been heaped on him, and started beating his chest like King Kong. And my wife is over my shoulder reading his emails, going, "Who does he think he is?" And
that's the voice he uses for me.
Well, yours is a little deeper, just a little. And so I'm reading this, and I'm telling my wife, relax, you're very protective. And so I go, how do I respond to this kid, right? So I go, I'm sure your mother is very proud. Sin. And Scott is such a sweet guy that he didn't even realize I kicked him in the nuts. He writes back, yes, I come from a very close-knit family, and they're very supportive. And I'm going, wow, really? Wow. So this is one of many reasons why I want personally somebody to make me a plushy Scott Snyder doll that I can just keep and squeeze and yeah. And so that's how it started, but that's certainly not where it's ended. And I could tell you a lot of the in-between. But Scott, just as I thought would happen, is once he got working with me, he'd see, what I was about, what I could do, and all that stuff, and he'd give me more and more space. And now that he's always so busy doing so many projects, and he trusts me even more, he's finally taken my advice. Now he'll send me stories that go, okay, this happens between pages 3 and 23. And go. and it's because he's busy, right? And he goes, and Greg can do it. So how we began and how we ended up is very different. So we're always trying to find the best way to give you guys the best work. And we're always evolving. That's the goal, is to evolve and change and grow and potentially get better if you can, right? So.
Yeah, I mean for me, I think the biggest learning experience for me as a writer has been working with him, and also when I started on Black Mirror. I mean, before I knew Greg, working with Jock was incredibly educational. You come in and you realize at first you're so scared of screwing it up because you've been wanting to get into comics for your whole life, that you think that the way to prevent that is to just control the comic and do the thing that got you here, which is to write scripts that are really tight and fully paneled and all that stuff. And what you realize over time is that the magic of a comic comes from the collaboration, and you find out how the person you want to work with likes to collaborate, what kind of a script they want.
And to be fair, some artists that I've talked to actually do want, full direction. Tell me what to do, and those guys are weak. I'm just messing. Everybody's raised a different way, but the way I was raised, they taught me. They taught me to get a book, 5 seasons of cinematography, learn film direction, storytelling, all that stuff. So that was just my background. But there's plenty of guys who want the early Scott. And you
Jim Chung actually on Justice League.
So you're still doing that?
Yeah, I don't like to anymore. No, I like it better.
I work with Greg. I have more time for the kids.
I know. He was always like, you'll work less and get paid the same.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I can see stuff. You're not getting paid by the word. Let me do all the heavy lifting.
I always I used to have, the funniest was I used to put photo references in for him, and for years, of things in the real world. Not I don't mean of this is how I want this. I'd be but it would be examples of the car, a car, whatever. And he didn't tell me for years that the program he used, he couldn't even see them.
That's the same as mine.
But that's because I didn't know there were pictures, right? But here's the thing that he misses, right? So this went on for years. I'm not seeing the pictures, so I'm not using any reference that he's sending me. So you would think a guy or girl, after a certain amount of time, go, why bother? He ignores it all anyway. And then I get a program just a year ago, and I go, there's pictures in all this stuff. And he's never stopped. He never went, hell with it. He's so obsessive, okay? Remember Super Heavy? Or was it Endgame with the beard? Super Heavy, that's what I thought. And Bruce Wayne has a beard, right? So while he could be at dinner with his lovely wife or bouncing a kid on his knee, he's actually upstairs Googling a beard to put in a picture in his script for me. A beard of all things. So, but some of the best treasures were, and someday I'll bring them and I'll show them to you guys, right? Some of the best treasures, he'd photograph himself and he'd be making a face or something. So I got these bizarre facial, so I got two great things that I could expose people I work with. I've got that. And then years ago, when I worked with Todd, I was just telling this story at lunch. I told you, I'd record this stuff on microcassette. And so he would describe scenes, and one time he was describing 42nd Street, and so this prostitute and this cabbie, and he goes, and the girl goes, oh, I'll give you a hike for $5. And I go, I have that on tape. Should I ever be down on my luck? I go, I don't know if Wanda would be happy to find you've been leading this double life all these years. So yeah, I've got his goofy faces, a little goofy recording. So yeah, someday I'll show them to you.
Yeah, now I'm glad the AV does not work. But no, who else has a question? Yeah. Yeah, you.
Oh, there's Todd McFarlane right there.
Holy shit! I saw him take the microphone, and I went, "Fuck is that guy taking the microphone?" Okay.
Well, listen. The first time Todd ever called me up.
We can't hear the questions in the back, so I'm your assistant.
Okay, Jock has never met Todd. Todd McFarlane, Jock, Todd McFarlane. All right. You were all here for the meeting, the first meeting.
Can I tell one quick thing about Todd? On my it's a good story.
Better be.
As opposed to.
On my 13th birthday, I came to New York Comic Con when it was in the other thing. It was like the Roosevelt Hotel. You remember when it was like over across from Penn Station? And I waited in line for hours to get a page from Todd. And I only had so much money, and I waited with my dad, and I got up to the front, and Todd gave me a better page than I could afford. It was my birthday. And he drew a thing for me on the back. It's Spider-Man 319, and I still have it. It's framed in my thing. And that experience, no, seriously, that experience to this day means the world to me. I was like, that's how pros should treat their fans. And my dad, all of us, it really was very, I told him this, we were on, of all places, we were like waiting to go on that Howard Stern thing together, and I told him about it, which was like completely an oxymoron. But it meant the world to me, and I really appreciate that. And
So since you can't show any pictures, what can you tell us about last night? Because I'm really excited about it.
yeah, well, I'll just describe all those pages to you. Photo reference. No,
It's a hell of a journey so far.
yeah, well, when I started on Batman, I was really terrified, and I remember one of the first cons I went to at San Diego, I met Grant Morrison, and it was pretty much the first time I had really sat with him, and he was incredibly kind, and I won't try and do his accent because it always sounds like Jamaican.
Go on.
Now we gotta get Tom King in here.
Yeah,
right?
Tom, he does a crazy, convincing Grant Morrison.
Yeah, if you go meet Tom King and go, do Grant Morrison, you will not be disappointed.
I was born in the same city as Grant Morrison, and I can't even do a Grant Morrison impression.
And he said, he was like, so I was freaking out because the pressure of Batman and all that stuff, and he said, the way to get out of it is to give him a birth and give him a death. Write your origin and make it yours, and then write his end. And know that, and then you'll own him, your version of him. And so 0 Year was the birth of our Batman, and this story is the one that I've been waiting to do for a long time. It's not necessarily his death, but it's how he ends, how our mythology kind of ends. And so it begins with, I'll spoil some stuff. So it begins with Batman, he's on a case, and it's a case where somebody has been mysteriously drawing a sort of a chalk line a little bit each day around Gotham, and nobody has paid attention to this except Bruce, and he just has this bad feeling about it. And when he's looked at it from the air with aerial photos, he's seen that the chalk line make a big dead Batman over over all of Gotham, and that where the heart would be is Crime Alley. And so he goes there one night, on the night that the thing is finished, and he finds a child under the lamppost who's I don't want to get to give too much away, but while he's on this case, he suddenly wakes up and he looks around, and he's in Arkham Asylum, and the doctor is over him, and he's sort of like, Bruce,
Here's where it gets good.
He was like, thank God we finally found a medicine that got through to you. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, let me out of here, I know this is a trick. And they're like, no, you've been here for 20 years, ever since you killed your parents in the alley.
Right? I see the faces, right? I get to draw that stuff.
And so he's like, this is impossible. I know it's a trick. Where's the Joker? Where's whatever? And they take him back to his padded cell, and he finds a little tear in the fabric while he's trying to get out, and he finds a little penny and a toy dinosaur. And he's like, and he realizes this, I'm really excited about it. And the next person that shows up is Alfred to confirm that this is true. So this is sort of the beginning of the story. And that's just the first, it's like the first 18, 19 pages. Before then, it takes off in a whole other direction where
It's a real journey. You've got me all over the place right now.
Yeah, he goes out. You see, he winds up getting out of this place, and you don't know if you don't know if he's there or he's not there, but he gets out despite everybody's warnings about getting out.
Can we tell him what Alfred presented to him to try and convince him, or is that too spoilery?
It's up to you. I'll let you. I always spoil everything. So.
All right, so Bruce isn't buying it. He's thinking it's all just a scam. And Alfred goes, "I brought you something," and they're sitting across from each other at a desk, and he reaches down, he pulls this thing up, and what it is it's a straitjacket, and it's like all the straps are like made extra long by tying other straps to it, so it looks sort of like a bat cape, and on the chest, instead of a bat, it's got the W for Wayne, right? And then the helmet it's from like shock treatment and stuff that they would use, and that's the mask, and he's kind of like taking these belts and these things to make kind of ears out of it, and so you look together and he goes, "This is what you've been thinking about," and you go, "That's the Batman suit," right? And so
that's the beginning.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's way more.
Oh, that's it. Please clap.
And I'll say everybody's in it. Wonder Woman's in it, Lex Luthor, Superman, the Owls, everyone. It really is kind of like the Odyssey, my version of our version of what happens to our Batman at the end. And it plays off all the stuff that we've done at different times.
That young man right there came to see me this morning. Yeah.
Well, my name is Lucas.
Hey, Lucas.
Hi. Is this story canon, or is it like more of like?
Well, Black Label is meant to be a place where you can go to do stories that are kind of out of continuity and that are darker than other ones that could be for mature readers, But ours isn't really. I wouldn't say that there's anything in it that's particularly more violent or dark than the stuff that we've done. It's darker emotionally, but I would say it's not canon in terms of Tom King's Batman and that stuff, but it's canon in terms of it continues our story. So it's not sort of all of a sudden you'll see things that have happened to Bruce in the past that would have been when we were doing Batman that didn't happen, or that the Owls are something different, or the Joker is not the Joker from our run. All that stuff, it's basically built as the end of the run that we did. So it is in canon for me in terms of our Batman, he would have been. Like what would have happened 25 years down the line.
Okay. Red Hat, give Todd a little bit of a journey.
First, thank you, Mr. McFarlane. I grew up with your Spider-Man run. Thank you. My question's to you, Mr. Snyder. Obviously, everyone here is to talk about your legendary run on Batman, but for me, one of my favorite comics from the New 52 was Superman Unchained. I thought it was terrific, and Jim Lee, you guys did a great collaboration. Is there any chance you would ever do a future solo Superman series?
Oh yeah, I'd love to do Superman again. The arc. But Justice League gives me a chance to write all the characters in a way where I can focus. The first arc of Justice League was meant to be kind of everybody, every idea, every kind of ambition that we have for it. And now I'm getting to drill down and do arcs that are more focused. So the third arc is actually all about Superman, and it's about the sixth dimension. Mixaplick and all those are Mixie-Split, like they're from the fifth dimension. This is sort of like, if the fifth dimension is imagination, the sixth dimension is all the things we can't perceive. And it's sort of like the control room of the whole multiverse, where things are made that become sort of crises and all this stuff, and so the heroes go there. So that's kind of a big Superman arc and what he's about. Yeah.
Cool. Right there, I'm pointing out. Sure, no, you, the one who turned his head.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you all individually. You've all affected, obviously, most of our lives in some sort of way. Scott, particularly. When you write these stories, you include your own vulnerabilities into these characters that are largely fictional, but that's what makes us connect to them as an audience. So I thank you for that. You make us kind of look past the beautiful visuals that something like these gentlemen would be drawing, but you collaborate with them in a way that we feel the characters as if they were real people, even though we know they're not.
They're not.
And to add on to that, these gentlemen, the way you two interpret these characters and are able to direct a scene by the way you show emotions or what you choose to not include versus what you include, thank you for that.
Thank you.
My long-winded end to this response. And
That's okay. I think it could go on a little bit longer. I'm enjoying it, really.
I see
And
no
I
problem.
hope my wife is listening. All right.
it'll end up in a question, and we discussed like how you guys have evolved, and that's kind of what I want to lead towards. How do you feel like, you know, from these two gentlemen's beginnings with Vertigo or yours with Marvel and Image, how would you feel like you've evolved your own styles, whether it be the way you will tell, you know, a story, or the way you will draw certain character interactions and so on and so forth?
I feel like it just evolves naturally, you know. I think when you have a good person that you work with, and yeah, I don't know. It's like the only change is that I feel like I know you better. Like you were talking about earlier, like, and you were asking about how things have changed. Yeah, when I first worked with Scott, I had full scripts, and now he does the Marvel style that you were wanting right at the very beginning, because we know each other, and I, you know, he knows he can say to me a paragraph, and I'll go, yeah, I can, you know, I can flesh that out. Yeah, I don't know. It's just evolved, you know.
For myself, it you know, it started with, as I mentioned earlier, you know, when I was at Marvel, they gave me the book. They told me to. I stole it from a library. It was out of print, but they told me to have it, so I stole it. That's what I did. That's the truth. And it's 5 C's of cinematography, which basically it's the basics of film direction. And then the other great bit of advice that they gave me was to watch movies with the sound off. And if you could follow along what's going on, that's good directing. And if you get lost, it's bad. Take it out. Move to another movie. So that was sort of my basis of learning how to tell a visual story, and so of course you just follow sort of your own instincts, and a writer can influence that to some degree, right? Because they're providing the story. And then when I went to work with Todd, you know, Todd opened my mind to just so many more possibilities in storytelling approach, and he never gave me any kind of constraints at all, you know, which allowed me to explore and experiment, and so that freedom and some of his tutelage, and like, you could do something like this way, and he opened my mind to different ways of thinking, and so I learned a lot, both from him giving me suggestions and ideas of approach, and also him just going, go, just do whatever. And so, and I think, you know, you're always trying to strive and grow, and when you work with different writers, it maybe sparks a different part of you that inspires a different approach. Definitely, you know, the way Scott writes is different, the way Todd writes different than whoever, and so that definitely has an influence over the way you direct that story. So I think, you know, as anybody who does anything creative, you're always wanting to, right, try and grow and find a new angle or do a different way to do it. Otherwise, you'll get bored, right? So hopefully, you know, it's an ongoing evolution, and when you stop evolving, maybe you should quit, you know?
Does Todd give you photo references? Yeah, we always had. I used to get so jealous. Do you remember this? We got into this huge fight in Toronto. Do you remember?
He
that?
got really upset because I always say that the best time I've ever had in my career in comics, which has been a long one, is the years.
The most fun.
Is the most fun is working with Todd McFarlane. Those are my fondest memories, and it gets him so jealous, you know. And
I'm like, I'm fun. And we were on our way to this Space Needle to, like, remember? I was like, come on, we're gonna dangle off it.
Yeah.
Like, I was so mad. I was like dangling off this building, all angry at Greg. I really was.
And he's always going, well, I'm going to take that title, you know, someday. And I'm going, he's got an unfair advantage, Todd does, because Todd's also an artist. And so we talk the same language right from the get-go. And so, and then with his total freewheel burn and understanding the perspective of an artist, he was just talking to me at lunch today going, you know, I write this story for someone, and you go, I want to do the story I'd want to draw. So if I give a 3-page, I'm just, quiet, don't get upset. I thought you were getting upset again. That if I give you 3 pages of this, I have to give you something really fun and spectacular, and that you'll enjoy doing. And so he, as an artist, he's always got that sort of plugged into the equation. And so he's got that advantage of being an artist, which we have sort of, built the same way. But you're fun. You're fun too.
I was like hanging off this building, and I was so mad about it.
Can I ask a follow-up question to Jock?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Jock, this is for you, because Greg's answered all my questions. Greg and I were trained in American superhero look, right? You have this really cool, evocative look, right? I mean, every time I look at your stuff, I'm jealous of it. How
Can I just take a moment? Todd McFarlane just told me that he's
Guys, take a look at the cover he did for me. Anyway, I'm always curious for people who actually sort of do non-traditional looks.
Sure.
And just own it, right? How'd you get there? Because most people are, maybe it was where you were born, so you weren't raised like Greg and I, but I'm curious about your style. I know how Greg and I got to ours.
Sure. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm from the UK, in case you maybe didn't notice. 2000 AD, the comic 2000 AD. When I was growing up as a teenager, blew the back of my head off. And the thing about 2000 AD, which maybe might be different to some American comics, is the Americans have the penciler, inker, color, and 2000 AD championed unique voices. So my comic experience was seeing Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, Dave Gibbons, Mark Miller, so many amazing voices in comics, and they were all unique. So I always assumed that the thing to do was to not think too much about my style, just follow what I was into and what I felt was kind of I enjoyed and I thought was cool. And maybe someone else would think it would be cool as well. I feel like that's all you can do is follow your own kind of path, as it were. So maybe there are influences just simply from being in a different country, and being exposed to different stuff. But I feel like comics is my favorite thing about comics is that it does give you the unique opportunity to follow your own ideas, and if you follow that through in the correct manner, you can be stood in a room with these guys and you guys, and that's great. He's coming.
Okay, hi. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Todd. Pleasant surprise. A lot of us here are looking forward to your Spawn movie. Speaking of movies, I would love to, anyone on the panel can answer this. I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions on if you could pick any comic in the horror genre to be made into movie. This is a two-part question. Would you want it to be animated or live action? And the second part of the question is, who would be in your dream cast if you could make any horror genre?
Well, first I'm going to bow out because even though I've done horror for most of my comic career, I was never a horror fan. I'm going to
Creech?
Well, I don't consider the Creech really horror. I consider him more sci-fi with maybe a slight edge of horror. But you're the horror guy.
Yeah.
And let me just tell you really quickly, right? So I never really wanted to do horror, but my very first job was a book called Gore Street. But it was the first door that opened, so I did it. Then I went and did what I really wanted to do, which is X-Force superhero stuff. Then Todd McFarlane drafts me, and I stayed for a very long time on basically a horror book. And so then, right, he wanted me to come back and draw Spawn, and I go, oh, and he goes, or you could do this other thing. I go, yes. And it turned out to be Haunt with Robert Kirkman. So now I got guts flying everywhere, right? And so I marry this woman, and she's got a young 6-year-old, and now he's in the house, and I'm like destroying things that are cool because, can't let the 6-year-old see this. And so I'm going, I don't want to show him my work, right? Because he's only 6, and I've got all these guts everywhere. And I go, I'm going to go back mainstream, get back. And they hooked me up with a horror writer. So I just can't escape it. It's my destiny. But, yeah. But you can answer.
Yeah, I remember when I was telling you the Joker face cutoff thing. And I was like so nervous that he would hate it and everything. And he was like so happy and smiley where he was like, these are my roots.
He's writing me going, I know I'm bringing you to a really dark place, and this is really difficult, it's really hard, and I'm really, really sorry, and I promise we'll do something lighter after. And I'm going, this is awesome. I did like 80 issues of this stuff. I'm cool. So yeah.
I mean, I would love to see the American Vampire for one, obviously, because I love it. It's a great home. Witches is a series that's so deeply personal as well. I really hope they do that, and it's in development. So we're hopeful.
But she asked, would you like to see it animated?
Oh,
live
right.
action?
Oh, sorry.
What kind of cast you might choose?
Man, I don't know.
I mean, a live action.
Yeah,
for
would be
sure.
pretty awesome.
Cast.
Oh man, I've never even thought of that.
Yeah, it's weird.
As long as we get to play a witch. Either both of us, like 2 eyes on like googly eyes on one side of the head, and you're like, oh. I'd never really given it much thought. I mean, I just think I love horror right now. I think there's so many good horror movies right now too. Things like that Blumhouse is doing, like Hereditary and all those things too, like Babadook, and that horror is going through a really good moment. I think The Conjuring, a lot of stuff. So my hope is that it would be given that kind of a treatment, I think.
And literally on Thursday, flying out here, we got a bit of good news about the Witches movie. So watch this space.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited.
All right. Who has an ask question? Right with the cap.
Oh, God's sake. Hello, my name is Gustavo. So you guys pretty much are considered all-stars. You're the top of the game.
Thank you, and please continue, Gustavo. We love you.
I love when people come up and they're like, I know you've heard this before, but I love your stuff. And you're like, that never gets old. It never gets old to hear
He's
that.
hearing that you suck, hands down, trust us.
But out of all the stuff that you guys done, like either writing or that drawing, is there any storyline or any drawing that you would like to take back and do it better or do it differently?
You can't.
Nearly all of them.
Yeah.
You can't look at your own
Most
stuff
recently,
today.
I would say my very first issue of Batman, if I could, and maybe part of number 2. That's when I started settling in.
For what reason? Can I ask?
Just because I didn't know exactly what style to approach him with, and I was thinking of going more cartoony, and then I didn't really like that, and I was really nervous. That's another reason. I was nervous, and I felt it bound me up. Because once I found out I was relaunching Batman #1, I shit my pants. That's what happened, right? And that's the truth. And so it took me till issue 2 or 3 till I just went, just do your job and don't think about it. And I sort of progressed. And you probably remember me asking, you think I should be go more cartoony or more realistic? But going a little bit more realistic felt like the right thing to do. And just to say something a little bit unrelated but related, is one of the reasons I like to stay on a book is because the characters eventually tell me how they want to be drawn, and so it's out of my control. It eventually just becomes, okay, this is how you act, this is your facial expression, this is your your body language, and they teach me how to draw them. Not the other way around, and that happens for me. I don't know if it happens for anybody else, but
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
it's the best feeling as well. Like when you get to a point where you don't have to think about it, you're just sort of almost
Right.
on
So
an automatic pilot. It's like you're in. It's just the best.
So now that I'm intimately, familiar with all that stuff, I'd love to go back to the first issues where I didn't have that, and make it how I feel about it now. And also it'd be less wordy and you'd see more of the art.
That's true. That's also true. Like the worst was I went back and remember I looked at Swamp Thing.
You're making fun of him.
I love Swamp. And
all the word balloons are orange.
That's the problem, is that they're like blaze orange, his word balloons, and so you don't realize it when you're writing
So you'll
dialogue.
go orange.
There's one page that's like a double page spread and it's all orange balloons. It's so horrible.
I know what you're thinking. Isn't it green? Shouldn't it be green? No.
Yeah, so I look back at, you always look back and wish you could change things, but I'm really proud. I went back and I reread Quarter Vowels and Black Mirror recently. I'm really proud of those, part of it is also there's something really endearing. I like going back and looking at it and realizing like what I've learned since then, and there's something kind of charming about it where you're like, oh, I sucked at that back then, in that way, and you
I
can
told
see your
him
growth,
because he's like a master Jedi, right? And I used to tell him, you're not quite there yet. You have the potential, and I said, and you're going to get there. And I used to tell him, here's what you need to learn first. And I go, and someday you're going to look back at this first issue, and you're not going to be so proud of it. And I go, and if you are, then you're stupid and you didn't learn anything. But he continues to learn. And the great thing about Scott, and I relate, sort of writers to lead singers in bands. I don't know, musicians are there, but they can really be a-holes. Sorry, lead singers, it's true. You have singeritis, where your ego takes over, and you can't take self-critique or anything like that. And Scott has certainly received enough praise. I'll show you the email and accolades that he could have that, but he's never ever. He has an ego. We all have one, and it shows in various degrees at different times. But he's always humble enough to listen to critiques, take advice, especially from me. I don't know if he does from anybody else, but he he definitely is. He asks me what I think all the time, and he's very open, and he continues to improve. So all the time. So,
thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, he's a great writer, don't you think?
Well, let's take more questions. How about you? And the Jack Skellington.
You're good. Don't worry about it.
Okay, big voice.
Yeah, you're fine. This is a two-part question. One is just to you guys. It's kind of piggybacking off her question that she beat me to earlier. Would you guys like to try your creative hand at anything other than just literature? And to Mrs. Scott, your stories seem to be very, very detailed oriented and pan an array of stories. Is it to keep yourself in line? Do you always write notes, or is it just that you just go back and reread them, or how do you keep that in mind when you're going to the next story to tie them all together?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so for that, the second part at least, how do I keep everything straight? I do a lot of planning beforehand. I have some friends that are writers that if they know the end of the story, they can't write it because it's not exciting to them, but I'm the opposite. I really need to know the ending. I need to know the first really big beats out of the 3 acts of it. And then in the middle is where I'll experiment a bit. I like to kind of find my way through certain things there. But especially when we're doing something like Batman Who Laughs or Last Night, those things have so many characters and are so big, and Batman Who Laughs kind of hooks back into some of the stuff we're doing on Justice League. I just keep a lot of big charts. It looks like one of those conspiracy theories things in my house where it's like the strings and the whole thing. So I try really hard to just keep it organized. The biggest thing for me, I love when comics feel, as a kid, that they reward you for long-term readership, where things come back and it feels immersive and it feels like a tapestry. So I'm trying hard to do that stuff, What was the first question again? The first
other creative endeavors aside from.
I'm really. I get offers for that stuff, and have done a little dabbling here and there, and on the side, mostly for friends that have things that they are asking for help with. But I'm really happy with this. I did prose for a while and loved doing it, but what I realized about it was it's so intensely lonely, writing, and you're just there, and I think it would drive a lot of people crazy, as I'm sure art does too, when you're doing yourself. Yeah, well, I just feel like to make anything good, you have to be honest about the things you're afraid of, the things that keep you up at night, the things that inspire you, and you sit all day alone with those things. And the thing I love about comics is that, for me, it's collaborative. So you make these things with other people, and then that thing goes out in the world, and you guys read it so quickly, as opposed to a book takes years to put together. There's this constant connection, both with other creators and with you guys. It's like we're all in a conversation about stuff that really matters to you as a writer. So I don't know. I don't have any big ambitions to go write movies or that kind of stuff or anything like that. I really love it here in comics.
Okay, right there with the cap.
Me?
Yep.
Oh.
Ready?
All right. No, Todd. Okay. So,
I love the way he just went, no, Todd, don't.
So, my name is Sam, and I was just gonna ask, throughout this panel, I've noticed that Greg and Scott, you guys have I like your dynamic. So
Me, not so much.
I'm sorry.
Look at these guys. How can I come up with this?
I was just gonna ask, what do you think is the best story that has come out of your two's like friendship.
The best story?
Yeah,
You mean out of our personal life friendship?
Well, you said out of our friendship, so.
like your bromance.
Well, Scott likes to cite. Scott likes to cite one of the changes where we kind of grew closer as a team is in Court of Owls at issue 5 when I had the idea to turn the book around, and at first it was okay, and then we got pushed back, and Scott joined arms, and we and he cites that as like a turning point where we started marching forward, and he felt that we were more of a unit, and so I know Court of Owls is special to me. What do you have to say?
Well, yeah, I think another moment. I mean, it's really odd because I think of moments like there are moments that were seminal to us, like creatively. Also where there are important moments in the run we did, and important moments in the Black Mirror and that stuff on the page. And then there are the moments that you guys don't know about that are like the moment where, for example, we were in the middle of when we started Black Mirror, and I was terrified, and I had a really bad bout with complete anxiety. I mean, you remember. And I was like, I got so paralyzed by fear, and this happened with Greg as well at one point. And I didn't remember how I get so nervous at times, and I'm better about it now. But where it was almost as though everything I wrote, there was just a voice in my head that would be like, "You're gonna write that sentence. That sentence is horrible," and just panic attack. It feels like you're having a heart attack. Take a walk around the room, get some water, come back, sit down, start. You're gonna write that sentence? That sentence was even worse. Panic attack, get up, get around the room. It's almost like all the tools that you spent all this time learning how to use are totally alien to you. Everything, metaphor, characterization, you just don't know how to do it anymore. And so a lot of the times, as much as like I look at moments that I laugh about, like I love that moment with the book turn because Greg wrote this super impassioned email to DC where he was like quoting Steve Jobs. And
Stay foolish was the quote. Stay foolish.
And I was like, what he said, and you're like, that kind of stuff. Those are the moments that I really do remember that are private in that way where, these two guys have been there for me at really rough moments.
Yeah, I remember his struggles, and me trying to talk him off the ledge, and reassure him all the time. And, we've only just recently, we were together, and he told me what anxiety is like and what he used to experience. He's had a good spell, and it was horrifying. And so, I knew I was dealing with a guy who was troubled, but I didn't know to what degree. And so, well, I didn't mean it to be funny, but yeah, it is kind of funny. But in that way, I think our friendship also grew in that way, because when you open yourself up and let each other be aware of your vulnerabilities or what have you, your personal life and what you're going through, it brings you closer together. And so we sort of grew closer together just naturally. And now we're very, very good friends. Our family's good friends, and we, even if we didn't make comics together, we'd want to hang out, with each other.
Honestly, I'm more grateful for these friendships than for the stuff that we've been able to do creatively. We're all family at this point.
So, if you guys can see that or not see it, I don't know. He theorizes that you can see our friendship on the page, and maybe you can, I don't know. You do?
Yeah, 100%.
Well, listen, whatever is working, I don't knock any of it. So just whatever it is, we'll hopefully keep doing it.
Well, I hope that it's important. It's important in that way that you guys understand you're part of those relationships in a big way. Like, when I was starting off and you guys were supportive and ticking up things on Detective Comics when I started, you guys were there for the growth of that friendship and that relationship. And then with Greg, you guys always supported us when we had crazy ideas.
Like Super Heavy. There was a lot of pushback, to him, he wrote it. In the beginning, I just draw the pictures, I'm easy. But, most of you got in our corner and pushed us up and through that, and actually we sold great. And so you've been through like the stable, safe stuff, and then his more daring ideas, which people go, oh, that's stupid. And you turned out to go, no, Super Heavy is one of my favorite storylines.
Yeah, it was really funny because every time everybody gets mad, they don't get mad at him, they get mad at me. And then I remember the time I figured that out, it was right around then with Super Heavy where I was like, and I knew, I don't get totally rattled a lot of the time by responses to things, especially early when we put stuff out. What? No, I care. But I mean, you know when I get rattled? When I don't see something coming. That's when I get rattled. That's only happened maybe once. Like, where the time that I had a really bad spell where it really hit me hard was we did Death of the Family, and what happened was the book came out. Sorry, this is like total rabbit hole. But the book came out in the end, and it was like the best response we had gotten. And I was so happy, so excited. We put everything into it. It was all about fears about having a father again. We just had a kid, and then this backlash came right after that was like, everybody really angry that they had bought all of these tie-ins on the sides, and none of those characters had died. And I didn't see that coming at all, where I was like, wait, but I wasn't going to kill anybody. I wasn't going to kill Alfred or kill whatever. But because I hadn't paid attention to the fact that DC was really aggressively trying to bill it as a big event, not just a Joker story, because I was just drilled down. Like, this story is all about my deepest fears. You can do whatever you want. You do as many tie-ins as you want. I didn't understand the momentum that was building on the side that you guys deservedly or rightfully wanted or whoever did, wanted a big death or a consequence. So that backlash hit, and that really hit me, where I was, because I didn't see it coming. And I was like, I don't understand the what did I do wrong, When I know that something's going to upset you, but I love it, I do it anyway, because I know that when you're going to read it, hopefully you will love it the way I love it. But when something's announced, like Super Heavy, where they're like, Gordon's going to be Batman, and here's this crazy bunny robot suit, I know everyone's going to be mad. Or when we do say we're going to do the origin, but I love that story so much that it's not that I don't care what you think, I'm just convinced that hopefully you will fall in love with it the way I love it, and I'm willing to take that risk and swing for the fence to make something special. But with Super Heavy, it was funny because I was like, oh man, I knew they were going to be mad when they saw this stuff. They're all mad, it so sucks, they're so mad at us. And he was like, uh-huh. And I was like, wait, they're mad at you, right? Like, you go online, and he was just like, yeah. And I went and looked, and everything was about me. Nothing was about him. The worst he got was, I think it's so shitty you have to work with that guy, Scott Snyder. And that was it. And I was so mad. I was ready to create a troll account, just to send him one thing that was like,
And I gotta just say, now I always make the joke about if you guys love it, I take full credit. But if you hate it, I go, he wrote it. I just really wrote. But with Super Heavy, right, he always gives me ideas of how he thinks something would look, but he had his heart set on those ears. His heart was set on those ears. So that was the only stuff I was hearing, fucking bunny ears and bunny. And so I go, it was his idea. So I was still Teflon at that point. So, sorry. That's how it works out.
It's okay. I don't mind. I'll take the heat. Yeah.
So, just because you touched on your anxiety and that stuff, I just kind of wanted to know, just from all three of you guys, when did you hit the point? Obviously, with Scott, you have panic attacks. That's something that I'm actually very familiar with. Where you had that confidence, where, for example, you didn't care what the audience came about. Where did you find that balance? And do you still struggle as often as you used to with those panic attacks?
I feel like
Oh, you have them too?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Listen, if you do anything creative and you do it honestly, you're basically exposed, and that's not always a comfortable place to be. When it's all going well, that's scary. But of course, on the days where you're feeling like you can't, it's not flowing as well as you'd like it, then it becomes one of the hardest things to do because it's not happening. And then you think, why is this not happening? But you for me, I don't have, not to the degree, but I'm sort of aware of that feeling. But also, you just know that it's like peaks and troughs. Like you might, if you're down, you're going to come back up, and that's the thing for me that I just trust in.
It's just a trick. I honestly got help for it. I started seeing somebody and all that kind of stuff, and it helps that you realize that you're going through something that wants you to feel like it'll never end and it's just all darkness and that stuff, and you have to be able to say, I'm going to be really nice to myself today and do one thing that's productive and not be cruel and not listen to that stuff and just block it out in some way, and then you just go day by day, you know. I've learned how to be healthier and what, you know, my personal sort of triggers are and that stuff, and how to be better about stuff, but it's still always there. It's just more, I think I'm so grateful to be able to have done the stuff that we've done that I almost, those moments, like even metal was like our first event, right? I'm like, oh my God, I was so scared, so terrified all the time, and you're exposing, you know, your fears and all that stuff. I feel at this point, this year has been such an interesting year because I feel like we've done everything in the way where now it's just, I still have those total bouts of doubt, but now I just want to see, it's almost Uncharted, where it's like, I didn't think we'd get to this road, and now it's like, now I can do anything, you know what I mean? Where it's like, all the characters are available, we can do stuff on Black Label we couldn't do before, we can bring back stuff to Black Mirror spiritually, this is the successor to that, all that stuff. So I feel really excited now to be able to do that, and one of the reasons is because I can put all those fears in places and talk about them and express them.
Yes, I appreciate that. A lot of people aren't as open, so.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry. All right, how about him and then you? Is that good?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hey guys, I'm Adam. So I actually just read Court of Owls Volume 1 a couple weeks ago for the first time. I know it's really near and dear to you guys. I think the part that really struck me the most, and you guys alluded to it, was the part in the middle where you start to turn the novel, and I myself actually got lost as I was reading it, which was very interesting to the story since it's in a labyrinth. Could you just talk a little bit more about that, your inspiration for it, your ideas for it, the process and all of that? I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all starts with a script, and that particular issue, it began in a normal place at the front, and then it ended in a normal place at the back, with Damien up on the roof with Gordon and Bullock. And so, had he not written it with that bookend, I would have never done the turn in the labyrinth. But I go, oh, okay, so Batman's down there, you've all read it, right? He's drinking, you know, hallucinogens in the water, he's losing his mind, and so you go, so I wanted to add to that and make you feel that. So I came up with the idea of the turning, and I sold it to DC, and they go, yeah, and then they started getting nervous, you know, people think there's a printing error, and I'm going, no, the smart people get it, and they'll explain it to dumb people, it'll all work out. And then Scott, I think, got his copies first, and first, before that, I went over this, you know, where the turns would be, I mean, methodically, like 3 times with the editor. And so then Scott gets his copy, and I see him tweet, you know, I want you to know that this is all intentional, no mistake. And I go, take that tweet down. I go, you know, what do you take that tweet? I made some, you know, more about stupid people. Don't worry about it. And because none of you are in here. And so then I get my copy, okay, and I'm flipping through it. I'm making sure, because, you know, I went through my editor 3 times. The one thing I didn't anticipate was that at one point I'm going to have to start turning pages in the opposite direction than we're accustomed to. So I thought they made a mistake, and I got pissed off. And I'm like, I went over this 3 times, they wrote it on me! And before I fired off an angry email or got on the phone, it clicked, and I went, this is even better. And I go, this is better than I even dreamed it would be. And so all the more, so I was like, no, keep it quiet, this is all going to work out great, except for people with iPads. But who don't know that there's a lock button, right?
I didn't. I actually walked around. I didn't understand.
Because he's a smart squirrel. But yeah. So it took me by surprise. But that's how it all took place.
Thank you. I got handed a mic from the Creative Response. This is now the coolest night ever. You guys rank really great comics, and I've sort of been just wondering, was there ever you guys have always had like these really awesome scenes that are just like Joker dragons or the bunny robot, you know, was there ever something that you were either drawing or writing that you were like, this is the coolest thing could have ever imagined.
I didn't do that stuff, but I can remember speaking to Scott when he was telling me about metal, and he was just like, "Isn't this the coolest thing you've ever heard?" Like literally verbatim what you just said.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna go. I have those moments a lot, and throughout my entire career, right? Those moments are in practically all the comics. At some point, there's moments. So yeah, that's the fun of it. That's what got you into comics, or got me into comics, is I was flipping through these things and go, wow, look at that, and wanted to grow up and do that. And so everybody who does comics feel the same way in a way. And so there's going to be those moments. So Scott Friedman, there's sweet Joker Brand, Batman, battle axes, and you just go, wow, yeah. It's fun. So
there's moments, yeah. I mean, I like the Batman Who Laughs has some, and then I'm literally about to pitch him another one where I'm like, this is. I get it all the time where I'm like, I think this is the coolest thing, and the joy is when you guys feed it back to us. But I get them about everything. I often think about and I wanted to ask you what things do you get excited to think about all of us doing that we haven't done? Because I think about those things all the time where I'm like, what character would we do if we went to Marvel, or what would we do? What would we do?
I'll just tell you a couple of his Marvel ideas. He's got an idea for team up of Wolverine, Captain America, and Ghost Rider.
They all ride motorcycles.
And the other one, which I really got excited about, because it involves the Hulk, and it would be called Hulk Smash Everything.
That's it. Really, I pitched. I was like, I have a big Hulk idea. I'm really excited about too. But
comics.
Yeah, I don't know. I think our time is just about up. Right? We got 2 minutes. Does anyone have a super quick question? You want to call in somebody?
Yeah, sure. Right there in the dark blue shirt.
So you guys have been doing comics for a long, long time. Where do you just get all these ideas, like of James Gordon Jr. becoming a psychopath, and the Court of Owls, like where?
If you really pull apart Scott's stuff, which is very layered and methodical, you'll see he just steals pieces from movies and strings them all together.
If only it was that easy, dude. I wish.
That's the way I would do it.
No, honestly, if you're an aspiring, it comes from trying to think about what are the things that keep you up. What's scary? Like the Death of the Family. I'll give you an example. Death of the Family came from we were pregnant with our second kid, and I was like, oh God, I'm going to be a terrible father this time. I can barely manage this first kid. And I remember being like, well, Batman has a family. Maybe he feels that way and feels this family. He wishes he loves them and he's so better for them, but does he have these fears? And then all of a sudden, what if the worst villain in the world, Joker, was whispering to him, oh, I just heard you wish that your whole family was dead so that you can go back to being the way it was with me and you, and that's Death of the Family. So it comes from a place emotionally where you're trying to say something true and say something about what you hope for, what you're afraid of for you, for your kids. And then the plot stuff grows out of that for me.
I was going to ask you, sort of follow up with that, right? Because I was aware of the theory that there's only actually 20 plots. And so I was going to say, when you have these ideas, and like you just described, do you then go, and this will be the framework as ascension plot or descension or revenge, or do you then try and go, this would be the right frame for this story, and then use that mechanically, sort of?
No, I have a mechanical. The most mechanical I get is I'm really religious about 3-act structure, about which I'll do a video, a YouTube thing about it, because I really believe in it. But what I do is then I'll say, okay, how do I tell a story that gets to the absolute rock bottom scariest place of that thought? So I'll be like, well, I build it out of that. So I try and build it emotionally. So I know Death of the Family from that. Well, what if Joker says, I know that deep down you don't want this family. I've heard your worst fear. Well, how do I tell a story where he convinces everybody of that? Well, what if he got in the cave and Batman hid that from them? And he's jeopardized all of their lives. Okay, well then what if he cuts off his face to show what's beneath? I try and build something. Everything is built on the emotional core. So each plot decision is like Batman Who Laughs. I'll spoil some stuff. Batman Who Laughs opens with Bruce essentially on a mystery, and he's going after this smuggling ring, and he finds in one of these big smuggling cases a dead Bruce Wayne. And this Bruce Wayne has lived 10 years longer than him and has retired after he had his back broken in Nightfall and got married to Selina and had a child. and clearly has had a different life. And he has to autopsy himself, which is one of my favorite things, so that he figures all of this out. And the story was all built from this idea that the Batman who laughs is his worst nightmare and has seen him on multiple worlds and knows that deep down what makes Bruce happy is something very different than what he thinks makes him happy. And he's here to burn the whole city down, showing him that. So I build it out of, this is what I'm afraid of, this is what I'm writing about. Every plot decision is about how do I get deeper and meaner and harder into that thing.
And when you reach the end of that, then do you analyze and go with this?
Yes.
This would be a descent.
Yes. That's my 3-act structure thing, where I measure it against once I have like the pieces that I know are the emotional pieces, then I measure it against, do I have an inciting incident? Mm-hmm. Do I have, is this one of the, I slot it in and say, how does it measure against these things? Mm-hmm. Like the graph of it, and then I'll see, sometimes I'll be like, well, I'm just going to break those rules because it makes sense for this story and tell it a different way, and other times I'm like, no, it's such a crazy story like Zero Year or Super Heavy that it needs to be religious about those, so people feel comforted as it goes. So yeah, that's the joy of it, is trying all those different things and everything. And again, we can't thank you guys enough for staying this late and doing this. We love you to death.
It's a very hot room. Thanks for